food, and the second, come here. Ralph ran very fast, but not fast enough. Life in a big family was ever so tough. I'm one of too many, little Ralph hissed. If I left home tonight, I doubt I'd be missed. So that's what he did. Collecting all that he could, he set off in the night through the dark, lonely wood. He hadn't hopped far when he had a surprise. For there in the dark were two huge glowing eyes. It was just an old owl who flew down and said, "What are you doing? You should be in bed." "Bed is for bunnies. I've struck out alone." "Silly boy," said the owl. "Life's no fun on your own." As he left, Owl called out, "This wood's full of dangers. Be careful, be wary, and don't talk to strangers." Along with the sun, a strange creature rose. He was dressed very smartly with a long, pointy nose. He'd a big bushy tail, bow tie, and white socks. Silly Ralph didn't realize he'd just met a fox. "Please let me stroll with you," said the fox to the rabbit. "Making friends with your kind is my one pleasant habit. Here, have a carrot, just to show that I care. Then I'll give you some more that I keep in my lair." "A whole carrot for me," said Ralph, quite impressed. He was glad he'd left home. This friend was the best. Fox picked up Ralph's bundle and said, "Follow me." But the wise old owl hooted from the branch of a tree, "Don't trust him, don't go. He'll eat you, you'll see. That stranger's a fox. You should listen to me." Ralph turned tail and fled, but the sly fox gave chase and soon had him cornered, up close, face to face. In no time, the noise of thumping paws was echoing round the hills and the moors, as hundreds of rabbits all came to Ralph's aid, closing in on the fox, who for once was afraid. Fox turned tail and ran to a chorus of cheers, and Ralph said to his family, amid laughter and tears, "Thank goodness I'm one of a large happy bunch, for without all of you, he'd have had me for lunch." So if you're a rabbit, or tortoise, or hare, don't talk to strangers. Stick with people who care. And that's what Ralph says to the loves of his life. For now, Ralph is older, with 6 kids and 1 wife. Austin the oyster was ever so small. The tiniest oyster, the smallest of all. The lack of his largeness would not have been bad, except for his pearl. His pearl made him sad. For pearls are what oysters take pride in the most. The larger the pearl, the greater the boast. But Austin, poor Austin, felt shame and not pride. So small was the pearl that he'd shelled up inside. Other oysters would mock him and pick on him terribly, calling him names that shamed him unbearably. "Hey, Austin," they'd cry. "What's that little fleck? A dust mite, a pinprick? It's not even a speck." But worse, oh yes, worse. Today was the day the king of the sea was coming their way. Now the king rarely called on their small oyster town, but he wanted 1 pearl for a special new crown. A pearl so perfect the king had requested that no gem in the kingdom would ever contest it. "Hey, Austin, clear off. The king won't want you. Big pearls befit royalty, so your pearl won't do." Austin slunk off. He felt he'd been banned, and without using a spade, dug himself in the sand. He tried not to cry, but how could he not? His heart, it was hurting and hurting a lot. The king came a-riding, his crown on his head, and he pulled alongside of the great oyster bed. The large oysters smiled, then opened up wide, and dared not to breathe as the king looked inside. Then he saw our poor Austin, who was hiding afraid, and said, "Open up, lad. What pearl have you made?" First Austin turned white, then went red in the face, so he scurried away to conceal his disgrace. A very young seahorse then swam up to him and said, "Please, dear oyster, you mustn't be grim. I know why you're sad. Like me, you are small. But at least your pearl's something. I can't make one at all. So whatever the size your young pearl may be, it's better than none. Would you show it to me?" Austin could tell that this seahorse was kind. He smiled and relented. "For you, I don't mind." He opened his shell. Then, to his surprise, the seahorse jumped up, saying, "Look, it's my size." "Come quickly," she called to the king of the water. He swam to her side, for the girl was his daughter. Austin was shell-shocked. She was the king's little girl, and not only that, she had chosen his pearl. "It's so lovely," she said. "Please don't turn me down. Might this be the one to place in my small crown?" "I'm honored," said Austin to the king's little girl. She bowed and said, "Thank you," as he gave her his pearl. She placed it up front, the only jewel in her crown, and the oysters cheered Austin from then till sundown. Yes, they hoisted our oyster and rejoiced one and all. And from that day to this, Austin never felt small.
Oh, I love the animal story.